everyone. Good afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today at the myAvtar Job Fair for Women, along with our esteemed panelists. We are going to discuss about a very important and interesting topic today, and that is leadership behaviors that will transform your career. And in this panel discussion, we have some accomplished business leaders, and together we will explore the best practices that women professionals can adopt for taking their careers to the next level. Please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Bhavaraju, Head of Software Development at Ather Energy. Ram is a senior engineering leader currently heading software and web technologies at Ather Energy. He has varied experience in e-commerce and has been part of teams at Redbus, Simply Learn, and Paytm previously. Hearty welcome to the session, Ram.
Thank you so much, Nisha.
I also have with me Sindhu Kapur, who leads people business partnering for data services South Asia at Mastercard. She is passionate about making a difference and always shows high levels of emotional intelligence to get the best solutions in all scenarios. Sindhu is a strong advocate of inclusive people practices and is Mastercard South Asia's DEI lead. She helps drive programs and initiatives like Women Returnship, Women in Technology, Parental Support, Women Mentorship, Beyond Gender, etc. Hearty welcome to the session, dear Sindhu.
Thank you.
Our third panelist for the day is Meera Narayanan, Director Consumer Talent Acquisition APAC in MENA, Amazon. In her current role, Meera leads a global team of 350 plus members comprising of recruiting leaders, recruiters, sourcers, and program managers to fulfill the hiring demand for over 1,000 plus business cost centers. She is also responsible for creating mechanisms that drive cultural alignment and cultivate an employee base that reflects Amazon's diverse customer base at scale around key principles of Amazon as an organization. Hearty welcome to the session, Meera.
Thank you for having me.
So, a topic for discussion today is quite fascinating and thought provoking at the same time: leadership behaviors that will transform your career. And we've seen that across the past so many years, women have made significant progress. Today, we have women occupying very, very important positions, leadership positions, both in the society and across different business sectors. But historically, there has been a debate about women's performance when it comes to leadership. In fact, during the COVID 19 crisis, we've heard anecdotal evidence about women leaders doing a better job, and new research studies actually back these findings. One study found that outcomes related to COVID 19, including number of cases and deaths, was systematically better in countries which were led by women. Another study looked at the governors in the USA and similarly found that states with women leaders had lower fatality rates. However, many studies, including Women in the Workplace Study 2021 by McKinsey, show that despite small gains in the leadership pipeline, women remain underrepresented across the corporate level, specifically in senior leadership positions and board level positions. So, my first question to all of you is: what are the personal and professional barriers that impact women from reaching the higher levels of leadership in the corporate world? So, Ram, if you could share your perspectives first, followed by Meera and Sindhu.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Nisha. Uh, the barriers are it predominantly comes from the way things have been set up. Right? It could be society or the community, the way things have predominantly set up in the last 50, 100 years. And that is what has been followed quite a bit. And what I've seen, especially I'm coming from software, I've been in the software role for a long time. Whenever there's a gap in your own professional career, people tend to overlook your gaps, and that's one of the main reasons where I've seen, especially women not being able to continue what they used to do. I have my own sister, my wife, who have been doing that, and they took gaps from their own careers and restarted that, right? But off late, it's been changing. I have seen a lot of change in the last 4 5 years. Now, no longer nobody talks about sabbaticals, and sabbaticals have become a new norm. That's a very pleasant thing to look at, right? But if I look at about 15, 20 years back or 25 years back, we were more traditionally set up, especially in India, and that is that is what I've seen as the major barrier, where women were little, whenever you had any gap, right? It could be because of any reason. It could be a marriage gap. It could be you have kids, or you have to support the kids going into the schools and all, right? Being a father, I do that, all of that job, right? So I am doing it in the morning, and then I go to the office in the afternoons, and then I keep doing that day in and day out with both my kids. Uh, now at least I could see a little bit of change, but that was the major barrier. As the reasons could be varied, but the major barrier was that a gap in your professional career, even in an educational career, was major driver for the last 2025. Even if you look at statistically, right, look at the amount of people who have dropped out from colleges, or probably dropped out after high school, is quite higher than anyone who at least reached college and finished the college. You would see very low rate of drop when you start your education, like your bachelor's degrees or master's degree. But the biggest barrier is crossing that 10 and 10 standard and 10 plus 2. Similarly, in professional life, once you hit any of these barriers, the continuation drops very, very significant. And that's a very fact that lots of workplaces have become very open in this case. Sabbatical is like the newest norm. Anyone can take that break and come back. And that's where we're moving.
Thank you so much for your perspectives, Ram. Over to you, Meera.
Sure. Even before I start answering that question, I have to say it's super encouraging to have Ram on the panel as an ally. And I think it's fantastic to have that. And I'm saying this, I'm sure, on
Thanks,
behalf of Sindhu and myself.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. And coming to the question, I think I'll start with some stats. Nisha, you aptly touched on the pandemic part, right, on COVID-19. I think even before the pandemic, our overall progress towards gender equality has remained pretty flat for the last 4 or 5 years. And I think I was reading an article recently, and that really, some of the stats are starkly glaring at us, right? That's one. Then, if you look at women overall in terms of an average, I think about 75% of the world's total unpaid care work, including things like childcare or caring for the elderly, and some of the things that come very naturally, and we call it organic. We don't know if there's a big question mark if it is organic or not. But in some regions, such as South Asia and Middle East, and even in North Africa, women's share of unpaid care work is as high as 80 to 90%. Now, that itself is a very big barrier, right? The third one for me is, I think, our attitudes and beliefs, right, which are very traditional even today, the societal mindset, right, about the role of a woman. As an example, if you look at many of the surveys and many of the research that are actually available on the public domain, in our countries, specifically in our countries, people who have taken the survey, more than 50% of people who have taken the survey have said that if the jobs are scarce, then men are more likely and more entitled to get the job as compared to women. And women have taken that survey and said that. So, and if you compare that with, let's say, for example, Western countries, the difference is huge, because there it's about 1 in 6 respondents said something similar to that. So that gap is wide, right? And I mentioned Ram, right? And I also feel like I don't know how many men have logged into this event or are present at this event. But if we continue to preach to the choir, we will never be able to drive that change. I at least feel very strongly and passionately about that. The concept of men as allies is super powerful, and we need to include more men, not just men who are championing inclusion like Ram, but the ones who are more passive today. And I think it's not just men. We have seen women as well who do have stereotypical mindsets, let's face it, but we have to make an impact on everybody to make sure that we make the change that we are wanting in the society. The one last thing that I would say is, the one thing that has been the biggest barrier, and at least for me as a woman leader, has been a transformational change, is the recognition of unconscious gender bias and the evolution of the overall journey from being a bystander to an upstander. I have had a very hard journey myself. when I've witnessed non-inclusive behavior around me, or for women around me, it's been a very tough journey for me from being a bystander to an upstander, because this unconscious gender bias, right, it does hold women back in the workplace. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. When we talk about biases, there are very common biases, like even at workplace, like likability, performance, maternal, attribution, affinity, etc. It makes it harder for women to get hired and promoted, and impacts their day-to-day work experience. And I'm talking from my own experience, right? And where does it really happen? I mean, all of us have that question, right? But I feel like it happens in our day-to-day interactions. If you look at hiring, our meeting dynamics, our performance reviews, promotions, mentorships, and I can go on. But the most important question is, why does it happen? I think many of us, right, filter information based on our experiences, our attitudes, our beliefs, and opinions. And we often distort or reject, or maybe even ignore what does not seem to align with our context. I think leveraging diverse perspectives and interrupting that unconscious gender bias is important in today's world. And we at Amazon take this really seriously. And it's like a mechanism around how important it is to challenge our own perceptions, build bridges with others who are less like us, and create those strong frameworks and mechanisms that are really going to work to break through the barriers and bring that unconscious bias down. Back to you, Nisha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of these perspectives, Meera. Now, Sindhu, over to you. Your thoughts, your experiences, your perspectives.
Sure. I think some great points made by Ram and Meera here. See, while as a country, we've made a lot of progress, right? But we still have a long way to go in securing good participation in managerial and senior level positions. I think we only have about 14-15% representation today. For a majority of girls in India, bias and discrimination against them seeps in very early in age, whether it's early education or later on, technical education. And this continues in the workplace also. If you ask me, in my experience, what really contributes to, the main factors which keep women away from leadership positions, I think one is flexible work arrangements. Is there enough flexibility for women at workplace? I think a lot of women still feel very apprehensive, right, about announcing and managing a career break. Second thing I can think of is pay. I mean, we are in 2022 and women still make less than men. And according to a report, if I remember right, I think Indian women, every Indian woman is earning only 1/5 of what an Indian male counterpart earns. Yeah. And the next point I can think of is non-inclusive workplaces, where women often get dismissed or disregarded or ignored. And then, the point that Meera made also, societal and family pressure, right? Women who work also have to manage the household chores, child and elderly care, along with the professional responsibilities. This not only doubles the workload, but adds so much to the mental stress, right? And also a lot of women quit because of this, even in this day and age. And lastly, I think it's the culture and safety in the workplace itself, right? I mean, women still face a lot of microaggressions and challenges, which are linked to culture, which are linked to their safety. There's a fear of harassment, that make many workplaces overtly and covertly hostile for women. So I think these are some of the things which really act as barriers for women in taking up those leadership positions.
Thank you so much, Sindhu. So, related to the personal professional barriers, we have a lot of perspectives from all of you. In fact, Ram spoke about the aspect of sabbaticals and career breaks not being such a big issue today, which is really, really a welcome change. And the fact that COVID-19 helped us in ensuring that men are now more involved when it comes to family responsibilities and childcare and all of that. And Meera spoke about several aspects like the fact that 75 to 80% of the total unpaid unpaid caregiving is being managed by women. Then we have the different attitudes and beliefs about the role of women, the societal perceptions, and many of the stereotypical beliefs that women tend to internalize themselves, right? That's again another aspect. And then the fact that many studies, like you mentioned, Mira, have shown that in scenarios where there is job scarcity, even women believe men are more entitled to more jobs because of the stereotypical notion that men tend to be the primary earning members of the family, right? And then, of course, the big aspect of recognizing non-conscious biases in oneself and the different type of biases that exist in the society, which Sindhu pointed out again, the fact that early childhood exposure and experience of being at the receiving end of biases and how that impact women and girl children, the importance of flexibility at the workplace, pay parity, which is still a challenge, non-inclusive workplaces where biases are prevalent, harassment and microaggressions, and also the internalizing of the societal pressures, the big burden of caregiving, etc. So thank you so much for all of bringing out all of these aspects. My next question is specifically addressed to Mira and Sindhu. What I would really like to know from both of you is, as women and as leaders, what kind of challenges and endurance test have you both experienced in your own journeys? Because it's not easy, right? Right from, I mean, we go through all of these hurdles. And I think that very famous picture that many of us would have seen, where a journey to leadership for a man is almost straightforward, whereas women have to cross several hurdles. So over to both of you to talk about your journey of the different challenges and the endurance tests that you both have experienced.
Okay.
Sindhu, would you like to go first, or Mira? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go, Sindhu.
Go ahead, Meera. That's all right.
Okay. So I have many examples, and I'm going to be very upfront and shameless in sharing those, because I think there is that vulnerability that comes in, right? We all evolve in our journey, and I have evolved in my journey. I have failed 100 times. Like I said, I've been a bystander, and it took me an effort and a conscious, intentional, deliberate effort of moving from being a bystander to an upstander. And I did mention unconscious bias. I think for me, that was one of the transformational journey where, I really had it hard. And I can probably give a couple of examples from my experience. One is about hiring, right? I've been part of hiring committees where I've noticed a lot of times that my colleagues prefer candidates who are men over women with very similar experience. I'm sure many of you would probably relate to this. But sometimes we just take that as a standard norm, right? Now, again, why does it matter? This could be a sign of bias in our hiring process and may unfairly disadvantage women. But when qualified women are overlooked, organizations do miss out on their talent and their chance to build a more diverse team. I think I've learned from it. What I would like to touch on is the fact that this is not just the experience. It's not just about the experience, but I think it's on us. We take charge of our own careers, right? I mean, there are two choices that we have. We sit down and say, hey, this is happening. I really don't know what to do about it, but this always happens. It happens across in every organization. But what can we really do, and what can we really influence? I think one of the things that we did, and obviously through my mentorship, and I think that's where the mentorship plays a huge role, right? I did have a very honest chat to say, hey, why does this happen? And when I think to myself today, I think some of the things that we can do is we can always go back to the hiring committee that, you notice that's what my mentor actually recommended to me. And I did that after a lot of thought, and then decided that I should do that. Then went back to the hiring committee and said, hey, why are we selecting men over women with similar abilities? And we should be able to explain why it happens, right? And the solution there was, if you look at researchers, they always show that when teams agree on a set of clear criteria and use it consistency for all candidates, irrespective of men or women, or any underrepresented cohort, the hiring process is fairer, and the most qualified man or woman can rise to the top. And I think, again, the reason it happens is we tend to rate women lower than men. And this is, again, subconscious. Even if they have similar qualifications, this can make a real difference in hiring, right? I'm sure you all would have heard it in some shape or form or manner. One of the studies where replacing a woman's name with a man's name in a resume increased the likelihood of being hired by more than 60%. This is deeply rooted in the performance bias that I was talking about earlier. I'll probably give one more example from my experience, which is to do with everyday interactions, right? In a meeting, when I was present in a meeting, someone actually suggested that a woman on the team be given a big high-profile project, and a colleague actually said, I don't think it's a good time for her as she just had a baby. I'm sure, again, these are things that we can relate to, right? And why does it matter? I think it's important to retain and promote talented women, whether we like it or not. Sidelining them, even with good intentions, works against the goal of denying them opportunities that can lead to advancement, right? What can we do here? I think one of the things that being an upstander, one of the things that you can do is remind your colleague that this could be a career-changing project for whoever gets it, right? So it's better to let the new mom decide for herself whether or not she wants to take it on, right? And again, this is deep-rooted in maternal bias. I think motherhood triggers assumptions that women are less competent and less committed to their careers. Ram alluded to this in the beginning to say sabbatical, taking a career break. But as a result, they are held to higher standards and presented with fewer opportunities. Studies also show that the maternal wall women face when they have kids is the strongest gender bias. So these are two things. And I think how we learn from there, what we do about it differently is far more important than what we face today. Back to you, Nisha. Sorry, Sindhu, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Meera. Personally for me, I think I've been fortunate and privileged to work. And I use the word privilege because I know that the path isn't easy for most women out there, right? I have worked with leaders who've always supported and encouraged me in my career. But doesn't mean to say that I haven't, in my role as a business partner, I haven't come across business leaders who haven't expressed that bias, who haven't displayed that bias, right? I mean, there are times in one of the organizations that I worked in, we were hiring a returner. The compensation, as simple as that, right? Coming back to pay, the compensation that was being offered was definitely not what the candidate deserved, what, he or she wasn't worth it. So the topic of discussion was obviously, let's pay what the person deserves. And then we really, as HR team, we had to get into influencing the business leader, navigating the chain of thought towards paying what the person deserves rather than paying what the situation demands. Yes, the person has taken a break. She's coming back after 2 years of, career break for whatever reasons, maternity, childcare, elderly care. But that doesn't mean that he or she is not worth, what we have to pay. So that's in another organization again, similar when we were hiring, for a position, a critical senior level position. A point of the woman has taken a long career break. Will she be able to come back into workspace and deliver at the same pace that we need the deliverables to happen? So these kind of things we've seen, I think, and as Meera rightly pointed out, as PNC, as HR teams, I think it's it's with us to really influence, to guide the business leaders in the right direction, to think that inclusive practices matter. It doesn't matter whether there's a career break. It doesn't matter whether it's a man, it's a woman. What really matters is who is bringing that kind of performance and competence to the table.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both for your perspectives, both Meera and Sindhu. So what we also hear from both of you is that along with the individual challenges that you have battled, both of you have also been actively advocating for inclusive practices, be it in hiring, be it related to pay parity, be it sensitizing other business leaders on the importance of inclusive practices. I guess it's been an amazing journey, and thank you so much for sharing that. So Ram, my next question is to you. And my question to you is, Ram, based on your experience of being an ally and an advocate, which are those leadership traits that really help women in navigating those complicated power structures within an organization. So, what are your thoughts related to this?
Yeah. Like both Meera and Sindhu had touched upon the real life examples of what is happening out there. The leadership traits for me predominantly are one and the same. Right, it's like one of the major things which like strikingly comes out is how compassionate are you with the kind of work what you're picking up, or how are you deciding your own career. So one of the things what I think Sindhu and Meera was pointing out that women inherently saying that, hey, I don't want to go probably in that path, right? If I take a break, what will happen? Someone else will catch up with that, right? So two things. One is that are you compassionate enough about the work you do? And second is how are you able to put yourself or self-rate yourself and go in that career path? And that is majorly where I see a huge difference. So if I compare a male versus a female, right, or any diversity over here, right, if someone starts in a career A, especially on the side where I am, right, they typically tend to go in that side, irrespective of what are the breaks they're going through, what are the journey they're going through, and they keep on going in that same way. Uh, I'll tell you example. I know all of us probably might be able to relate it, right? If I take women employees or women coming into the workforce, they typically look at, okay, shall I go into the HR roles? I've been on the technical side. I've been on the engineering side. Hi, okay, now I want to try something in program management. Right? So that is where I feel that that's inherently coming from. Probably there's no proper guidance, or probably there's no empowerment in terms of the senior leadership to say that, hey, you can still continue pursuing your career the way you have started it, and probably look at options at a different point in time. uh, I don't know why are these default choices coming in that saying that, okay, I want to go into something else which is much easier to do. Probably I want to do something like a business analyst, or just like a product analyst, and just take care of things, right? So that barrier is coming out of self, right? So I'm not saying that whether it's societal or whether it's someone else pushing it, but it is you have to be empowered for your own self. So your self empowerment is more important over here, right? All of us as senior leaders, irrespective of the gender, all we do here is just sit in this position, give them directive inputs, give them good suggestions on what they would want to do, right? But if you're not self-empowered, irrespective of, I've seen on both sides. It's not that it's just on the one side, but predominantly on this side, what the topic of the day, right? Where I've seen majority of them just switching careers, thinking that the other career is much easier to pursue, or it's easier to break in there, right? But the times have changed quite a bit in the last 15, 20 years I have been around. I've seen a lot of things have changed. People have really grown in technical roles, and they have done very very well in terms of technical roles and their leaderships, and the kind of outputs they are getting out, right? Especially in software, in the product management, which is like one of the hype things which is around software or any product what you're taking up, right? It's just that uh, the part where they have taken for their self is what is deciding them the way they would want to go. As an ally advocate, I always tell them, encourage them, saying that you have to continue irrespective of what happens. And if you don't continue in this way, you would not know whether your choice is right or wrong. You just because you have taken a break, or probably because of some other reason that I want to go back to my hometown to support my own parents, it doesn't mean that you have to change your own career path. And that is where significantly I've seen people being dropping off. I quote one example before I close out on this one. Right, I've seen people who like based on marriage and based on their husband's preferences have changed their career, and I was very very like disappointed with that, saying that, hey, why are you changing your own career path because you have to follow someone to go there? And that's where I really couldn't get any answers. Probably Meera or Sindhu might throw some light out here, but that also drives a lot, right? Because if you don't have that self for yourself, and you are not empowered enough, irrespective of how much ever we bring in the diversity, how much ever we get onto the plate and say, hey, this is where you can grow, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
So, Meera and Sindhu, anything that you would like to add on to what Ram mentioned? And Ram, thank you so much for sharing these perspectives. I mean, compassion and the whole aspect of being self-empowered, which is, I guess, very, very important in one's own, not just leadership journey, but in one's entire professional life. In having a career trajectory, planning and charting one's own career path, I think that's very, very important. So, anything you would like to add here, Meera and Sindhu?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I couldn't agree more to the point Ram made on, self-empowerment, self-awareness, right? I mean, self-promotion, I think, is extremely important in the sense that, very often women tend to be less confident in the workplace than men and less focused on, strategic incentives such as promotions and raises and all of that. I think this really needs to change if women have to climb up the corporate ladder at the same pace that the men do. And I think another important point also, in the same breath is in negotiating, right? I think one of the many factors that contribute to the gender pay gap is that lack of negotiating done by women. I think we go very soft on that aspect. In the same, that self-empowerment line of thought, increasing our self-confidence. We, again, going back to the same fact, right? We deal with so many biases in the workplace that really can cause, us to be undervalued when it comes to our own achievements, or judge more harshly when it comes to the mistakes or the errors that we make. Okay, so something happens even more so if you're a working mother or join after a career break. So I think we need to learn to reward ourselves and celebrate our wins. I think self-validation is the best form of validation. Another important point that comes to my mind, Nisha, is executive presence and being a thought leader, right? I mean, by executive presence, I don't necessarily always mean be suave, have that kind of style, but also I think, have a sense of purpose, show passion for your job, and of course, an active presence in the room. And I think it's very important that as women leaders, we add value to the conversations that are happening in any meeting. So, these are a few additional thoughts that come to my mind.
I couldn't agree more, Sindhu, specifically related to the point of being self-critical. I guess I relate to that a lot, a tendency to become more self-critical, and of course, negotiation as a skill that most women need to sharpen, as well as executive presence. So, thank you for adding those very valuable inputs. Meera, over to you.
Okay, I'll take a couple of minutes and I'll share something that we do consciously at Amazon. But before that, I think the one thing that I would say, adding to what Ram and Sindhu covered, is that I think knowing that bias exists or that disparity exists is not enough. We need to commit to taking actions, right? And forward-looking actions. I'm sure, again, you all heard this, right? When leading orchestras started using blind auditions, the percentage of women rose from 10 to 35%. That's the power. So at Amazon, we pay a lot of attention to unconscious bias training to create awareness on the types of biases that exist. Where do we commonly see it happening? And why does it matter? And what should we do? And why does it happen? Now, all of us at Amazon, all Amazonians make a very conscious and deliberate effort to encourage colleagues around us to make it a habit of asking questions rather than making assumptions. I think this is a great way to uncover potential bias, and we practice something called the if-then mechanism, which is about two simple things. The first one is, if or when you find yourself disregarding a woman colleague's idea quickly, then challenge yourself to ask at least two more questions for verification before making that decision. The second one is, if you make an assumption about someone, please stop and ask yourself, how do I know that is true? Then actively go and seek the answer before you act on your assumptions. And that's what we call the if-then mechanism. It is something very simple and something that we can bring it to life, but we make sure that we're again deliberate and really intentional about this. And we all, irrespective of what level, what designation, what gender, which underrepresented cohort you're from, everybody goes through this as a mandatory training in our organization. Back to you, Nisha. That's all I want to add.
Thank you, Mira, for highlighting the unconscious bias, or at Avtar we call it non-conscious bias training, which is very, very important. In fact, my next question is on the same lines, which is about, if all of you could share some of the best practices from your respective organizations, which involves any programs that are dedicated towards developing a pipeline of women leaders across different levels, because it's not just about developing women leaders at the top. You need to start early. You need to start to have programs at entry level, early career level, mid career level, and that is how we build the pipeline so that we have more women at the senior level. So Ram, would you like to go first and talk about some of the best practices at Ather Energy, and followed by Mira and Sindhu?
Sure. So we've started internally, especially Ather, we have started few programs, called on people from outside, and started sensitizing and awareness around women and diversity, specifically on diversity. And there were few important roles, because we are a OEM, right, or original equipment manufacturer. They were roles which were predominantly male, dominant in our production or in the manufacturing units, where we've consciously gone and hired women employees out there, and that's sitting on the factory shop, working hand in hand with men over there. And these were very, very few things which we have done, and then we have done some good videos around just making them introduce what is Ather and Ather's culture, and that made a huge impact in terms, especially when we went to the colleges, or when we went to different events to pitch in for employment, even for awareness campuses, awareness campaigns, right? This helped a lot. Sensitizing, we have done programs around specifically sending requirements for women to apply for it. We have done programs internally. In fact, we have taken a very conscious call of making our washrooms LGBTQ proof. For that, we have actually shut down the washrooms and said that, hey, now we want, it's just not about women, right? It's about bringing in diversity. The moment your workplace becomes more diverse, automatically the inclusivity will start coming up. So we are doing programs ensuring that there is diversity in it, and that is what we are speaking outside also. And that's a very fact that I am here instead of anyone else. It's a very natural pick for any other woman leader within our organization to come in. And all of them say that, no, Ram, you have to go in there, so that it's not, the moment we speak about it, all these small gestures make a lot of difference, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Ram. So Mira, over to you.
Sure. I think I'm going to talk about within the organization and how do we go outside the organization and do something for the society at large at Amazon also. Within Amazon, I think there is a lot that we do. And one thing that comes to top of my mind is the Rekindle program, which is the ramp back program for women who have taken break from their careers and for whatever reasons and want to come back and join us. We have a very structured, very clear modality of getting them back and making them successful and setting them up for success in our organization. And we do everything right from a launch plan to making sure that their overall career is taken care of. There are mentors available. And then we also map their interest, their passion to the overall organizational open requirements, etc. And there are other things like, work from home flexibility and daycare and maternity benefits, etc. But what I do want to touch upon more than within the organization is how do we give back to the society and community at large that we live in from an Amazon standpoint. We run multiple programs for women empowerment and upliftment that actually help transforming lives. One such program that you will see very clearly on the Amazon store is the Amazon Saheli program, where we empower women entrepreneurs across India. The Saheli store is a dedicated storefront on Amazon.in. If you go to our portal to display women entrepreneurs' products and facilitate them to sell their products to thousands of Amazon customers across the country. Then we also have Amazon Cares. This covers our villages in the southern part of India. And this is again around women empowerment. And one of the essential components for the development of a community is to ensure that women of the community experience that equal right and privileges, because 60% of India is about rural population, right? So as part of our CSR initiatives, we empower women through awareness sessions, providing training, promoting women-owned stores and businesses, strengthening the overall women-based institutions, etc. We also have many other programs like Kalahar program, where we go and celebrate weavers, artisans, and craftsmen from across India to restore and revive traditional Indian handicrafts and handlooms. And there are many others, but these are top of my mind right now. But I think we go within organization, we also go to the community at large to make sure that we are doing our bit to make sure that there is something that we are doing to uplift our overall, strengthen the overall intent and the overall role of women at large across the country. So back to you, and Sindhu, I think you're taking the turn next.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So what you mentioned, Meera, unconscious bias, and Nisha, you mentioned non-conscious bias, right? We call it conscious inclusion in Mastercard. So it's again, we have a lot of programs across various verticals again, right? I'm beginning from talent acquisition, whether it is an early talent or leadership positions, to talent engagement, to career development, to the learning needs. At every step, I think inclusion of not just gender or various other, beyond gender also is something that we very consciously do. In fact, we have an overall program itself on diversity that inculcates a lot of these, requirements in various touch points within the organization. Of course, we have a lot of global programs that we run here, but then there are a lot of custom-made programs locally that we run in South Asia as well. To give you an example, if it's talent acquisition, the returnship program that Meera spoke about, right? We have something called the India Women Returnship Program, where women on career break are, and we've been successfully doing it for the last 3 years. We have internship program also, where employees, candidates can, do a sense check, come in, do an internship, evaluate if this is the organization they want to be part of, if this is the kind of role they want to be part of, and then move on to getting into full-time roles. We have, of course, career fairs, where we focus specifically on women hiring. Our campuses, we make a conscious choice to go to campuses and hire a lot of women, especially in technical. And I think that's one space where we're struggling. It's a challenge in Indian market today, where a lot of technical fields do not have enough gender representation. We've discussed that before, right? So we try and see how, have initiatives where we can increase the representation and give opportunities to women in those fields. Coming to development itself, once they're hired, mentorship programs. We have this whole beautiful platform called Unlocked, where various opportunities for mentorship, for short-term projects, long-term projects, reverse mentoring, all of that is available for employees. And, we use it extensively for women who are interested in investing in what they're doing, beyond what they're doing right now. We have a beautiful program called Care 9, where parental support and guideline is given not only to women, also to men, to spouses of men. There are various programs that are run, coupons that are given, advices, workshops. So it's seen great success, and year on year we've been seeing 100% utilization of this initiative.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great. So good to know about all of these initiatives, that all of you spoke about. I now have a rapid fire question, and the same question to all three of you. And the rapid fire question, Sindhu, you can go first. And my question is, who is the most influential and most admired woman leader in your personal and professional life?
My mother-in-law.
Okay. What is that one or two traits that you deeply admire in her?
I think her strength and conviction in making decisions and sticking by them.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's just, the empathy that she brings out in every decision that she makes. A lot to learn.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sindhu. Meera, over to you. The most influential and most admired woman leader.
As cliche as it may sound, I'm going to follow Sindhu, and I'm going to say my mother, because the one thing that I admired about her, and I think I've learned from her, is about not really being fearless to fail. She's never feared in her life. She lost her life to cancer, but then she's always inculcated that in me to say, be fearless to fail and learn from it. Be willing to experiment, have a really curious mindset. And I keep saying that to everybody now, but then the one person I've taken it from is her. And that helps me all the time in terms of, how many times I've failed in my life. I think she's been the one person who's told me, go, fail, it's okay. But as long as you learn from it, it's fine. So I think she's that one person that I really admire the most, and I get my strength from.
Great. So good to know that, Meera. Ram, over to you.
That's going to be my wife. And the trait in her is that she's self-empowered. She's actually a manufacturer, and she runs her own industry. And that's I see her biggest trait is that she's self-empowered, and she continued. She's a third generation manufacturer. In fact, her grandfather started a manufacturing unit. Her father continued it, and she is the one who's continuing the same baton, right? So usually doesn't happen, and that's she's the one for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ram. So we've actually reached the top of the hour and I never even realized how the 45 minutes have actually passed. So in the interest of time, I'll quickly wrap up the discussion. I guess we had a very, very enriching discussion on the leadership traits that really help women in rising to the leadership positions. And what we really understand is that every organization needs leaders who are able to pivot and learn new skills, who are able to focus on employee development, team development, that is developing others, especially when the times are tough, people who are compassionate and sensitive and understanding. And these are traits that are more often displayed by women. So it really doesn't matter what the gender of a leader is. When the most talented person or when the most talented people rise to the top, regardless of their gender, everyone ends up winning. So that's a key message that we are taking from this very, very enriching discussion. Thank you so much, dear Ram, Sindhu, and Meera, for joining us today and sharing these very, very informative and interesting insights with each one of you. I'm sure our audience has had some great learning and takeaways. So we have come to the close of this session. Thank you so much for joining us once again. And to our audience, please do stay tuned for more interesting and enlightening sessions that are lined up for you. Thank you so much once again. Thank you so much once again, dear Ram, Meera, and Sindhu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.